أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوب العالمين أبو قاسم مصطفى محمد Dear brothers, sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm assuming most of you have been here at least once in the last 3 nights, so I won't do too much review. Tonight, as you know, is one of the more significant nights of the month of Ramadan, which is the Shab-e Qadr, and it is marked also by the commemoration of the martyrdom of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Our subject the last few nights has been these verses from the dua of iftitah. Allahumma inni narqabu ilayk fi dawlati kareem tu'izzu bihi islam wa ahla wa tudhillu bihi nifaq wa ahla. That we are striving, our most ardent desire is the striving for the building of the divine just state. A state in which this idea of Islam will become honored and dignified, and the condition of hypocrisy and duplicity will become decreased and eliminated. These are the two forces that we are constantly in battle with. And as we mentioned a few nights ago, the Prophet has mentioned that in the beginning, Islam was a stranger, and it will return as a stranger. So give glad tidings to the strangers. And he repeats this 3 times. That means the idea of Islam that was on the social historical level introduced by a man named Muhammad, peace be upon him, will go through a process of becoming so separated from its essence and its objective that it will seem like a strange idea once again. Now, the idea of Islam or Muslim is not originally an idea that began in Arabia. If you remember back in March, we talked about how in the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 19, the prophet Isaiah expresses his most ardent desire to become like a Muslim, and that is the Hebrew word. It is exactly that word. And the way Muslim has been defined in that text is to become perfected. To become perfected in submission and in the will of the Almighty. So we have been following this, trying to make sense of this process of perfection, one letter at a time, one dot at a time. And I apologize yesterday. Some people thought that I put this up there and there was some hidden message in it. No, there's not. I just picked a random image from the internet to make the expression and the metaphor of connecting the dots a little bit more visible. But it's based on the idea that when we talk about one letter at a time, we're really talking about something even smaller than the letter, which is the dots that compose the letter. And as you recall, that idea of the nuqta, the dot, which is like the atomic subparticle of language, was not something that I made up. Because Amir al-Mu'mineen himself said that all of the message is in Quran. And all of the Quran is in the Fatiha. And all of the Fatiha is in the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And all of the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is in the Ba. And I am the Nuqta under the Ba. So when Amir al-Mu'mineen, this personality that we remember and name and celebrate all the time and is a big part of our culture, what does he mean when he says, I am a dot? This is what we are discussing and figuring out through these nights of Qadr. For those of you who were here last night, we talked about the significance of a name. How when Ernie Terrell refused to say the name of Muhammad Ali, Muhammad Ali kept insisting that he say his name. Ernie Terrell insisted on calling him Cassius Clay, but Muhammad Ali had changed himself. He had gone from being Clay to being Ali, and he insisted on that position. He had become something higher, something more dignified, something more than an earthly being. And we've talked about this journey of Adam. How the Almighty Allah breathed into Adam from himself. Because before he breathed into himself, he was nothing but dam, nothing but flesh, blood. And when the Almighty breathed into him from himself, the Aleph, he became something worthy of dignity, something worthy of prostration from the angels who do nothing but adore and circle around the Almighty. But I wanted to also remind us of the dal, the meaning of the dal in the name of Adam. For the dal signifies the dunya, the trivial world, the material world, the veil that keeps us from our true self. And if we become too absorbed in it, we can lose sight of who we really are. But as the dal in its shape signifies, it has both possibilities. It has the possibility of ascension and at the same time the possibility of descent. And this is where we continue our journey of the dots today. Because we all know that we're here. We're absolutely sure about that. But what is it that we have to do? And to this we come to the letter Lam. What is the Lam? The Lamed, as it was called in the ancient Semitic languages of Aramaic and Hebrew. The Lamed, the Lam is the tallest letter of all the letters. It is the only letter that goes as high as the Aleph and as low as the Nun. Its name means to teach and to learn at the same time, which is a very interesting concept. For in our language, we separate teaching and learning. But the Lamed says, no, teaching and learning is simultaneously the same thing. In Spanish, there's an expression that says, enseñar es aprender dos veces. You could probably figure that out if you're from California, even if you don't speak Spanish too much, but that teaching or learning is learning twice. This is what the Lam means, literally in its name. That means we are down here for no other reason except to learn. It is the Gnostics say that if Aleph is our theoretical knowledge, Lam is our practical knowledge. Lam is the methodology, the process of connecting the dots. Lam is digging deep into the soil and coming out a tree. This is its shape over time. The Lamed has evolved in its outer appearance, but its meaning has always been the same. It is shaped like the staff of a shepherd. And that is what is referred to. It's one of its names is the staff of the shepherd. Because the shepherd does what with its staff? It leads, it teaches, it learns. That's why most of God's chosen people to lead humanity to its highest goal first got their training not with people but with sheep. And with that they led this human being and other things through the craziness, the chaos of all the dots. That image that I showed you at first, yes, it's chaos. If you were a little bit confused, that was a little bit by design. I can't take total credit for it, but when I thought about it, I go, yeah, that's good. You see, because we live in a time where, if you weren't here yesterday, I talked about the roots of the word dot. Which gives us the word data and information. And how we live in a time where we are overloaded with dots, overloaded with information. And what we struggle with is trying to connect the dots, putting the dots into their proper position. Which is why many psychological issues and all these things have been on the rise. We have more information, we have more knowledge, but we have less tranquility. Because we are overwhelmed by this chaos and we're unable to give order to it. Because it is too fast, too much. And to this chaotic world comes the Lam. The stick of the shepherd that guides to the knowledge of the self. And that's why the Lam in this process takes the front row of the word La. The Aleph goes to the inside. And the Lam becomes the first letter of the word that begins our journey of La ilaha illallah. This is what we do in Ramadan, right? We are learning the meaning of La. La to the lower desires, La to the nafs amara bisu, La to all those gods that we have created with our own hands throughout the year and throughout our lifetime. But it's not just no. There's a illa, right? There's an exception. There's this La is leading us inductively somewhere. And that's the Lam. The Lam signifies the process. You know the Philadelphia 76ers, they have a slogan, right? Have you heard this? I know you don't have a process here anymore. You guys are on top. But the Philadelphia 76ers, their motto is trust the process. For those of you who are NBA fans, for 4 or 5 years, they deliberately lost as many games as they could. Can you imagine that? And they kept telling their fans, trust the process, trust the process. Each year, because they lost so many games, they got like the top pick. And now this year, finally, all that losing has led to a team that is on the verge of competing for a championship. I know you don't want to hear that here, but I'm just speaking from their point of view. Maybe they'll get LeBron next year, I don't know. But this expression, trust the process, is very true. It is, to me, the meaning of lam in a lot of ways. Because there's a lot of pain and losing and suffering that goes into it, right? And it's very hard to keep your eye on the prize. And that's where faith comes in. Because our journey is so long. Our journey back to liqa'ullah, to the top of the aleph, is so long that we have to be willing to struggle in the moment. And that's why sabr becomes so critical. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wal asr. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. God is swearing by asr. You know asr, that prayer we do every day? Do we know the meaning of asr? Let's talk about it a little bit. There's many words for time. Sa'at, waqt. But then we have asr. Asr is just not any time. It is the end of time. It is when the day is running out. In some of the old books, they discuss a metaphor of a person who sells ice for a living. And by the end of the day, this ice is melting and he's in a hurry to sell it all off. Because if he doesn't, it'll be gone. And this is the metaphor of our lives and our time, as time is running out. Because not all time is equal, right? The last minute of the 7th game of a tie game is not the same as the first minute of the game. Maybe someone should tell J.R. Smith that, right? Not all time is equal. Time is running out. Wal asr. Inna al-insana, the insan is in khusran, is swimming. Khusran is like drowning in the water. But not only are you drowning, you are chained to the people next to you. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. All insan, every one of us, we're drowning. We are all chained together. Imagine that situation. And then one of the people in that chain wakes up. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا is the person who wakes up. He says, look, we're drowning. We need to get out of this situation, but all the people next to him are sleeping. What's the first thing he has to do? Or she, what do they have to do? They have to wake up the person next to them. There's no way this one person can swim up unless they wake up the person next to them. This is what watawasaw bil haqq means. Enjoining the truth, teaching the truth, lam, right? Teaching, learning. Each one teach one. You try to wake them up Says, no, man, I want to go to sleep. Man, we're drowning. No, let me sleep. Hits the snooze button. Wake up, hits the snooze button again. Wake up, hits the snooze button again. This is why you need sabr, because you can't quit at all. We cannot quit, and that's the meaning of sabr. That in learning and teaching, there is no quitting. Keep your eye on the prize, continue. Yes, they might make mistakes. Yes, they might want to stay asleep. Yes, they might want to stay locked and drowning. But you who have woken up, you are the enlightened one. You have to keep at it. That is the responsibility. Imam Ali says, "Kulluhum ra wa kulluhum mas'ulun." You are all responsible and you will all be questioned. No one carries the burden of another, but we all carry the burden of each other. That is why Lam is such a powerful letter in this formula. And that's why it means teaching and learning at the same time. Because there's no distinction between it. We are all teachers, we are all learners all the time. It's like breathing. In fact, it's more than breathing. Breathing is for the word breath is nafas, right? The same word we get nafs from. This learning is the breath of life. It is that's the metaphor. God said, I breathed into Adam from myself. How much time do I have? Somebody. 5 minutes? Oh.
5 to 10 minutes.
Yesterday someone said, you talk too little. So
10.
I was planning to go like at least 40 today.
Yeah, you can go 10 more. 15 minutes.
All right. Wal asr. Tonight we're going to be reading this sentence a lot. At least 100 times. Khalisna minan nar ya Rab, right? What is nar anyway? Let's translate fire, but let's go a little bit deeper. You see, we have nar and we have nur. And what's the difference between the two? Say that again?
One is bliss, one is pain.
Oh, you guys are getting too deep for me. Just look at the letters. I've been talking about letters. It's just, one has aleph, one has bet. Good, all right. I always ask easy questions. I don't ask. Nar has aleph, one has nur, right? So keep that in mind as we go forward. Tonight we were talking a little bit about Musa alayhi salam. And if you study the story of Musa, it is a very educative, it is the most detailed story spread in the Quran and in the Old Testament. It is a very powerful archetype. And I want to draw your moment to this critical juncture in the story of Moses, where he's in the wilderness. So they've passed captivity in Egypt and they're in the wilderness. Chaos, right? The wilderness is symbolic of chaos. 40 years in chaos, being you have no home. You're in a state of dissonance. Nothing makes sense. As you leave your homeland, or your captivity, you start missing all the things. You're like, this freedom isn't worth it. Right? This is what happens throughout the desert for 40 years. And Musa alayhi salam gets to a point where he sees a Narul Ali, or as you see here, the pronunciation Narul Ali. Now, I looked through about 23 translations. No one translates the La'ali part. They just say he saw a fire, a burning bush. And then what he says is that he wants to go there so that perhaps from this fire he can find guidance. And apparently only Moses sees this, no one else. But he sees it as something that is drawing him. He moves towards this Narul Ali. And this is the first time he hears the name of the Almighty. All this time he's journeying through, and finally Allah says what? I am your Lord. And in the original Hebrew, it's actually very precise. It says, Eye asher eye. I am that I am. That's it, I am. No other words, no letters, I am. After all this journey, past the Red Sea, all this struggle, all this, finally Moses experiences this oneness with the Almighty. For only He can say I. Everything else must say He. And if you think about what nar is, what fire is, what is the root of our displacement, is when we say I before He. When Pharaoh says, Ana Rabbukal A'la, he says, I am the Lord Ali. Right? Ana Rabbukal A'la. Shaitan says, Ana khayra min. When the Aleph loses its proper position, when you think you're Aleph, and you are not humble enough to be a Lam and learn, that is fire. That is nar. That's why we have Imam Nur and we have Imam Nar. Leaders of the light and leaders of this fire of selfishness. That's the fine line. This was the moment of truth for Musa alayhi salam, and this is the moment of truth for everybody who's on the path. Which is everybody. Inni ana rabbuka. I am the Lord, your Lord. And then the Almighty says to him to take off his shoes. You are in holy ground now. What do the shoes represent? The shoes represent the world. The shoes represent our separation from the earth. In Birmingham, they discovered this verse. This is one of the oldest manuscripts of the Quran. And the reason I show this to you because I want to draw your attention to the fact that there are no diacritics on the original Quran. So you could read that word in multiple ways. And if you really think about it, it's a fire that leads to Ali. Because the word, the letter La to a high place, the letter La in Arabic means towards something. Lillah, right? When you want to go towards something, it's the prefix is the Lam. Movement towards something is the Lam. Lam itself is teaching and learning, it's movement. So this nar that Moses is witnessing and experiencing is taking him to a very high place. In fact, the highest place possible. But what is the process? What is the process? To take off his shoes in the holy ground. That's why in our prayers, when do we say, when are we closest to Allah? When our forehead is on the earth, right? That's when we say, Subhana Rabbikal A'la. Takbir is greater. Azim is greater than that. A'la is as high as you could go. But where are you physically? In the lowest position possible. To go high, to go up, spiritually, you have to go low in every other way. You have to become humble. That's why we talked about this yesterday. Ilm without hilm is arrogance. Shaitan has ilm, but he doesn't have hilm. Pharaoh had ilm, but he didn't have hilm. Knowledge without humility, not knowing the source of knowledge, these are all things that lead to the nar, the fire that burns and destroys. So we want to convert that nar to nur. I must be done now. Oh, I got 5 minutes. Oh, okay, good. My timing. I want to just leave you with this story. This was kind of my big story for tonight. Just last year, researchers from Uppsala University in Sweden uncovered the remains of the Vikings. I don't know if you heard about it, but when they discovered this, they were a little bit confused. Because what they saw on these kafan of the Vikings, and you know Vikings, right? You should know Vikings because all your days of the week are named after Viking gods, right? Wednesday is Woden's day. Thursday is Thor's day. Friday is Freya's day. In case you weren't knowing this, you are living a Viking culture without knowing it through your days of the week. So these researchers at Uppsala University, they discovered that these Vikings from the 9th century, buried in Sweden, on their kafan they had these what looked like Arabic transcriptions. And what was weird is that it was the name Allah and the name Ali. How was this possible? They found an aqiq that said Lillah. An aqiq, this ring, on it was the inscription Lillah. These Vikings from the Scandinavian countries were going to their graves with these artifacts. And this makes one think about some of these realities. Because these artifacts come at a time, think about this, they come at a time when the name of Ali was a curse word. Remember that. Tonight we're celebrating or commemorating the ones who killed Ali in the mihrab while in sajda. This is the image we are coming to these nights of destiny with, right? And for 200 years, the name of Ali was a curse word. If you said it, you would be jailed or punished. But these Vikings somehow came across these artifacts to such an extent that they decided that when they die, they are going to shroud themselves with this kafan, the name of Allah and the name of Ali. It's a question that boggles the mind. Because no one would expect Ali to come out of the graves of Vikings at a time when the name was prohibited It's not like you could just go to the bazaar of the Abbasids and pick up one of these things. They had to have come in contact with very close companions of, and at that time would be Imam Ali Musa ibn Rida, the 8th Imam. So when we say Ali is Abu Turab, the father of the earth, and we see that history tries to erase this name, that it is almost exactly like a seed. The more you pound it down, the more it comes to fruition. The Native Americans have an expression. I said they thought we were seeds. They thought they were knocking us down. They were oppressing us, but they didn't realize, they didn't know that we were seeds. And that is the mindset of the believer. That no matter how much darkness this world will give you, no matter how much you will dish out, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا أَنْتُمْ أَعْلَوْنَ. Do not have grief, do not have fear. You are Alaun, you are Ali. And that is how one becomes full of faith. When the fear and the grief is removed, there is nothing in this darkness world, there's nothing in this world that can discourage us and remove the hope. This is happening. We're live witnesses to this right now. This is Swiss researchers uncovering hidden gems. And they're uncovering the letters again. 2 minutes? I'm done. All right. So with that, we will conclude. Thank you for listening.